Welcome to Cafe Tales. Tonight, the sunlit glamour of Nice casts long shadows. A playboy dead in a hotel suite. A lion-headed ashtray gone astray. A single embroidered initial and a photograph that could ruin reputations from the promenade to the casino. On the Côte d'Azur, suspicion tightens until Poirot arrives to separate Riviera spectacle from truth. This is Poirot and the Lion of the Riviera, an original story written by us in homage to Agatha Christie. Our tale is entirely our own invention. Before we begin, help us make the show better. Tell us one thing you love about nocturnal tales, and one thing you'd change. Story length, narration pace, sound design, music, upload cadence, anything. Your notes genuinely shape what we do next. Creating these stories, writing, narration, and sound takes many hours each week. And the truth is, likes, comments, and subscriptions aren't just kind gestures. They directly shape how the channel performs and whether we can keep growing. Nearly 7 in 10 of our regular listeners haven't yet subscribed. So if that's you, one quick tap on subscribe is the lightest lift with the biggest impact on the future of Nocturnal Tales. If you'd like to go further, you can also join our membership for ad-free listening and extras, or leave a small tip via Buy Me a Coffee. The links are in the description. Now the shutters part, the terrace doors open, and the Riviera begins to talk. Chapter 1. Interrogation at the Hôtel des Azurins. Your name? Captain Arthur Hastings, I said. Anor, said the man across the table, tapping his fountain pen against a thin file. Nom et profession? Arthur Hastings. Formerly of His Majesty's... Look here. Is this necessary? Everything is necessary when a man is found with blood upon his cuff, said the other officer more languidly. He had excellent boots and the air of a man who mistrusts all cufflinks. Inspector Marchand will ask the questions. I am Kaiser Verrier. Inspector Marchand inclined his head. New commands. You arrived in Nice when? Yesterday afternoon. I'm on holiday. With whom? Myself, I said, and then, recollecting the Riviera's tendency to manufacture scandal from nothing, I added, entirely myself. Ah. The pen scratched. And yet, Captain Hastings, you were seen last night dining at Le Foire with Monsieur Ronald Vale. I met him at the hotel, I said. Quite by chance. By chance, repeated Marchand. A man arrives alone and at once danger of some notoriety. What do you know of Vale? An American, I said, loud with money and an unfortunate cravat. He said he collected racing tips. I hesitated. And people, murmured Verrier. He spoke to everyone, I persisted. Waiters, the fishmonger, a woman with a Pomeranian. He would have dined with Napoleon if the fellow had wandered down from the hill. Did you owe Monsieur Vale money? Asked Marchand. Certainly not. Did he owe you money? I do not, I began hotly and stopped. He pressed a note on me to cover the bill. I told him it wasn't necessary. He laughed and said, everything's necessary when you're making friends on the Riviera. If you've arrested me for accepting the price of 2 sole Meuniers, I'll ring up the British consul, I said. Calmez-vous, said Verrier. We arrested you because Monsieur Vale is dead. The words rocked me like a sudden wave. Dead? In his suite at the Hôtel de Palmier, Marchand said, shortly after midnight, struck with a heavy decanter. There was broken glass, signs of a struggle, and on the terrace a handkerchief with your initials. I stared. No, that can't be right. Your initial, Marchand corrected. An H stitched in blue. The maid says you visited Vale this evening. I did, I admitted. He asked me up for a whiskey after dinner. He said he had a proposition to put to me, which was to introduce me to people. Give me 3 nights, he said, and you'll go home to London with half the Riviera in your pocket. I told him I didn't want the Riviera in my pocket. and that if I did, I should ask a friend of mine who knows more about pockets than anyone alive. Your friend's name? I hesitated. I was damned if I would drag Poirot into a purely social matter, and yet, Monsieur Hercule Poirot, I said. Verrier's eyebrows shot up. Ah, le fameux Belge. Marchand's pen stopped. You know him personally? Intimately, I said with more heat than was sensible. We have been colleagues. That is interesting, Marchand said. But it is less interesting than the blood upon your cuff. I looked down. The mark, brownish now, had stiffened the edge of the linen. I must have brushed it against something, I said faintly. Against Monsieur Vale's head? Suggested Verrier. No! I cried. Good Lord, no! When I left, he was alive. Describe your departure. I arrived at 11, I said. We had a whiskey on the terrace. He became confidential. He spoke about a woman. He asked if I was a sporting man. I told him I preferred cricket to roulette. He laughed, then grew serious and asked me to deliver a note to someone at the casino. I refused. I don't go about playing Mercury for strangers. He became offended. We quarreled lightly. I put my hand to the terrace rail, tore my cuff on a nail. Marchand held up a hand. The mark is not a tear. It is a stain. I don't know how it came there. Did Vale bleed while you were present? Verrier asked. I didn't notice any. Oh, wait, his hand. He cut his thumb on the decanter when he poured. He swore. Americans swear in such inventive ways, and dabbed at it with a handkerchief. He asked if I had another, as his was embroidered with the wrong initials for the lady he was expecting. Lady? Marchand's pen scratched again. Which lady? I don't know. He only said, You'll know her when you see her. Everybody knows her. Verrier exchanged a glance with Marchand. Continue. I refused to stay, I said. He insisted I finish my drink. I did, reluctantly, and left by the balcony stairs because he said the corridor was crowded. He had an odd way of speaking, you know. Everything was a stage direction. You left by the exterior staircase at what time? 10, 11? Perhaps 20 past at most. And then I walked, I said, along the promenade. There was a breeze. I dislike sea breezes. They always feel as if someone is snatching at one's hat. But I walked. Then I returned to my hotel and went to bed. Alone? Marchand's tone was politely venomous. Alone, I said stiffly. Verrier shuffled papers. At 12:15, the night porter at the Hôtel de Palmier heard a crash. At 12:20, a woman in a fox stole hurried from the lift to the street. At 12:30, the valet discovered Monsieur Vale on the floor. The balcony door was open. There were footprints. One pair of English shoes. He glanced at my feet. 9.5, I said. It was a ridiculous protest, but I clung to it. Marchand's pen scratched briskly. He noted every word, but I had the uneasy sense that he was arranging the facts. Not as I gave them, but as he wished them to appear. His mustache was clipped as neatly as his handwriting, and I thought him a trifle too exact for comfort. Marchand leaned in. Captain Hastings, the valet says he saw you entering by the terrace earlier. I told you so. Entering? Marchand repeated. At 11:50. That's impossible, the valet insists. Then he's mistaken, I said. Possibly, Marchand said. But there is the handkerchief. There is the stain. There is also a letter. A letter? Marchand drew out a single sheet in a cheap envelope. Captain H., bring the money or the photograph goes to the press. It was in Vale's pocketbook. I brought no money. I cried. And in any case, what photograph? Said Verrier. That is what we would like you to tell us. I can't tell you something I don't know. Marchand folded his hands. Let us examine motive. Did you quarrel about a woman? We did not. About money? No. About a photograph? How could we quarrel about a photograph I'd never heard of? Marchand sighed. Then let us examine opportunity. You had access by the balcony. You left no signature in the register. You knew Vale would be alone. He said he expected a lady, I protested. And yet she did not remain, Verrier said. Possibly because the interview was terminated. I felt heat rise in my face. You cannot believe that We do not believe, said Marchand. We assemble. The door opened. A uniformed sergeant spoke in rapid French. Verrier's head tilted. Marchand listened, then rose. Quoi? I demanded. Your friend, said Verrier. He is in the waiting room. He has the mustaches of a general and the patience of a saint. He says he has come to take you home. Whoa! I cried. Marchand raised a hand. Not yet, Derman. The door closed again. We three sat and looked at one another. I felt absurdly as if I were playing cards for ridiculous stakes with no idea of the rules. All right, I said at last. What do you want me to say? The truth, Marchand said. I have given it. Verrier regarded me with his cool eyes. Truth is like the Mediterranean, Captain. Very clear until one goes out a little way. And then, zoot. The depth is surprising. We can settle the depth later, I said doggedly. May I speak to my friend? In a moment, said Marchand. First, one last question. This woman, everybody knows her. You have no idea who she is? None. Would you know her if you saw her? If everybody knows her, I said, I suppose I should. Marchand smiled without mirth. Bon, Sergeant, bring in the witness. The door opened again, and a perfume, powdery, expensive, precisely inclined to make a man feel he had underdressed, floated in before its owner. She was tall, dark, and wore a fox stole that might have paid a regiment's salaries. Her eyes were the sort that make one wish to apologize for existing. Madame, said Verrier, rising. Merci de venir. As she entered, I thought I caught the faintest shift from Marchand. His pen, which had been moving briskly across his notes, hesitated a fraction too long, and he lowered his gaze with almost military precision. It was nothing, and yet it struck me that the inspector, usually so impassive, was suddenly intent on the buttons of his file rather than the woman across the room. She glanced at me and then at the file on the table and allowed her red mouth the ghost of a smile. So this is the Englishman. This is Captain Hastings, Marchand said. Do you recognize him? She tilted her head. I have seen him, she murmured. Last night at Le Foire, he was with Ronnie. Ronnie? I repeated. You knew Vale? Everyone knew Ronnie, she said with a little shiver of boredom. He was always interesting until he was boring. But sometimes he became interesting again. Madame, said Marchand, were you at the Hôtel de Palmier at midnight? Her eyes rested on him like a moth on a lamp. I am frequently at hotels at midnight, Inspector. It is the Riviera. My husband prefers his cards at the Circle. I prefer conversation elsewhere. We have an arrangement. The corners of Marchand's mouth tightened almost imperceptibly before he bent over his notes. Specifically, were you at Monsieur Vale's suite? She laughed. You police always desire specificity. It is very tiresome. Madame Delacroix, Verrier said softly. A man is dead. For the first time, she looked serious. Yes, she said, and that is not funny at all. Did you see this man? Marchand indicated me, after 11:30? She considered. On the promenade, she said, walking as if his hat had offended him. I told you, I said. Alone, she added, but, Marchand prompted. She gave a bored little shrug. There was someone else. Of course, there is always someone else. On the balcony behind the palms, I did not see his face. And you went up? Verrier asked. I went up. Her gaze returned to me. Ronnie liked company. I am very good company. And when you left? Marchand asked. She smiled. When does one leave a party? When the music stops? Her face sobered. It stopped very suddenly. Did you see a photograph? Verrier asked. Her eyes flickered. You have it? No, said Marchand. Then I have not seen it either, she said with a coolness that felt like a gloved slap. She lifted her chin. For the briefest moment, Marchand's pen stalled above the page. Then he dismissed her with a nod. The door closed. Her perfume lingered like an accusation. Captain, Marchand said quietly, you will remain in custody. Custody? But the door opened for the third time, briskly, decisively, as if it had been polished from the inside. A small, immaculately dressed man entered, removed his hat with ceremony, and inclined his head. Monsieur, said Hercule Poirot, stepping into the room with the most perfect bow, I am desolated to intrude. But you have arrested my friend, and that is an action at once melodramatic, unsporting, and, how do you say, premature? Monsieur, said Verrier with unexpected respect, we were about to invite you in. Invitation or no, said Poirot. Me, I am in. I have just arrived on the morning train from Monte Carlo. Imagine my astonishment to learn, before I had even unpacked, that Hastings was already providing the local police with occupation. Truly, mon ami, you waste no time. His eyes fell to my cuff. Also, I beg you, never again the white linen on the Riviera. It is a magnet for tragedy. Marchand steepled his fingers. Monsieur Poirot, your friend's handkerchief was found at the scene. His cuff bears blood, and there is a letter demanding a photograph with his initial upon it. Evidement, said Poirot, beaming. Then it is simple. You must find the lady, the photograph, and the person who is not Captain Hastings. I will assist you to do so with economy and charm. Verrier smiled despite himself. You are confident. I am exact, said Poirot. He sat, placed his hat precisely, and folded his hands. Begin at the beginning, if you please, but we will do it my way. And your way is? Marchand asked. Poirot's eyes twinkled. To listen to what is not said. He turned to me. Now then, mon ami, you will tell me exactly what you drank, what you heard, and what you did not notice. The last is most important. I've told them everything, I protested. Pah! Said Poirot. You have told them everything an honest man thinks of. Now you must tell me everything a murderer would notice. Very well, said Marchand, settling back. We listen. Poirot nodded. Bon. And while we listen, commissaire, you will kindly instruct a sergeant to fetch for me 3 things from Monsieur Vale's suite. The decanter, complete with stopper fragments, the glass which is not chipped, and the maid who hesitates. Verrier rose. The maid? Why her? Because, said Poirot, smiling, she was instructed to make much of the handkerchief with the single initial H. Too convenient. N'est-ce pas? Real evidence does not cry out to be noticed, but false evidence? Ah, it waves its little arms in the air. Chapter 2. The Maid Who Lies. The sergeant disappeared at a trot, leaving Poirot seated very straight, fingers joined at the tips, eyes half closed, as though already arranging the scene in his mind. Marchand leaned across the table. Monsieur Poirot, you speak as though you already know the girl deceives us. Mon ami, said Poirot, when one lies, it is like wearing a borrowed hat. The fit, it is never quite perfect. Did you not notice, commissaire? She spoke too quickly, too certainly, and certainty, it is the perfume of untruth. Verrier frowned. You gamble with shadows. The handkerchief is evidence enough. Evidence enough to deceive the eyes? Yes, Poirot murmured. But not enough to deceive the little gray cells. At that moment, the sergeant returned, bearing the decanter wrapped in brown paper, a solitary whiskey glass, and trailing behind an anxious maid in stiff black uniform, her hands twisted in her apron as she was urged to the chair opposite. Voilà, said Poirot with a small bow. Now, mademoiselle, forgive us. We ask only for the truth. Marchand cleared his throat. Name? Claudine Germasse. You serve Monsieur Vale at the Hôtel de Palmier? Yes, monsieur. Tell us what you found after the discovery of the body. She darted frightened eyes about the room. There was broken glass upon the carpet, the balcony open, and the gentleman lying so still. I fetched the porter at once. Poirot leaned forward. And the handkerchief? Yes, monsieur. By the chair, white with the letter H embroidered. And what did you do? Poirot asked gently. I gave it to the inspector. Poirot's mustaches twitched. At once, without hesitation? The girl faltered. Yes, monsieur. Madame Delacroix told me I must. She said the police must notice it, that it would make things simple. She gave me money, only a little, monsieur, and told me I was to hand it straight over. Tiens, Poirot's eyes gleamed. So you obeyed. But real evidence does not cry out to be noticed. Only false evidence shouts so loudly. You see, commissaire, the handkerchief was not found. It was presented, and presented badly. Marchand rapped the table. Why would Madame Delacroix do this? His question was sharp, almost hungry. It struck me oddly at the time. Why should the inspector seem more anxious than the commissaire himself? The girl shook her head desperately. I do not know, monsieur. I only did as she said. Verrier waved her away with impatience, muttering orders to the sergeant to keep her under guard. When the door closed again, silence hung heavy. Well, Marchand said grudgingly. Évidemment, said Poirot. Your case, it melts like snow in the sun. The handkerchief is corrupted. The weapon is not what you believed. And your star witness, she sings a different tune. Verrier's mouth tightened. Even so, your Captain Hastings remains the last man to see Vale alive. His cuff is stained. He admits to quarreling. He is not absolved. Poirot inclined his head. Mais oui, commissaire. He is not absolved, but neither is he condemned. What you have is suspicion, not certainty. And suspicion, it is not enough for the law even in Nice. Marchand tapped the file. We could hold him on remand. You could, said Poirot smoothly. But then you will have the British consulate writing letters by tomorrow, and half of London's newspapers writing editorials by the day after. Is that the scandal you wish? Verrier shifted uneasily. Poirot pressed on. Captain Hastings is no vagabond. He is an officer, decorated, respectable. He will not run. I, Hercule Poirot, give you my word that he shall remain in Nice and at your disposal until the truth is laid bare. Let him be free under my custody. The two Frenchmen exchanged glances. At last, Verrier snapped the file shut. Très bien. He does not leave Nice. He answers every summons. If he vanishes, Monsieur Poirot, his blood is on your head as well as his cuff. Poirot bowed. I accept the responsibility. I cleared my throat, rather overwhelmed. Does that mean— Yes, Hastings, Poirot said, smiling faintly. For tonight at least, you sleep in a bed instead of a cell. Marchand pointed a finger at me. But remember, Captain, this is not freedom. It is only a rope long enough to hang yourself, should you be foolish. Come, Hastings, Poirot said, rising. We will leave our friends to their paperwork. Tomorrow we promenade, and already I promise you, the truth, it begins to glimmer. Chapter 3. Lunch with Madame Delacroix. The hotel roof glittered like a confection under the noon sun, its awning striped, its terrace crowded with hats of improbable geometry. Poirot had chosen it, of course, for drama. She will not resist, he told me as we waited. A woman like Madame Delacroix, she adores the stage. And what is the Riviera if not a theater? I wish you wouldn't sound so cheerful, I said gloomily. I'm still under suspicion. Poirot patted my arm. You are under my wing, mon ami, and it is the stoutest umbrella in Nice. She arrived 10 minutes late. A fox stole around her shoulders despite the warmth, her lips a perfect scarlet curve. She swept into the chair opposite, summoned a waiter with a glance, and ordered champagne. Monsieur, she said languidly, how gallant to invite me. One almost forgets that yesterday you hinted I was a criminal. Poole bowed. Forgive me, madame. I never hint. I deduce. Her eyes flickered. And what have you deduced now? That you prefer oysters to honesty, said Poirot, and that you hide more than pearls in your pretty box. She laughed low and throaty. Monsieur, what a dangerous little man you are. Very well, let us play. You may ask, and I shall answer, if I feel like it. Verrier and Marchand had joined us discreetly at a nearby table, their presence a reminder that this was not purely social. Poirot leaned in. Madame, we know you interfered with the evidence. You instructed the maid to make much of the handkerchief with the letter H. She raised her glass. Interfered? I call it assisting. Ronnie was untidy in everything, his ties, his debts, his friends. If a little servant girl noticed a scrap of linen, why not help her describe it properly? Pooh's voice sharpened. Because it was not linen, madame. It was theater. You wanted the police to see it, to think immediately of Captain Hastings. Her smile tightened. Truth is an expensive luxury. I prefer appearances, I burst out. But why pay the girl to lie, then? If you had nothing to fear? She cut me off with a glance like a blade. Because, Captain, men like you always see patterns where there are none. A handkerchief is just a handkerchief. The letter H might stand for anything. Hotel, health, even happiness. Poe's eyes twinkled. Or Hastings. A silence fell. Madame Delacroix set down her glass with exquisite care. Ronnie was a fool. He fancied himself a collector, of horses, of women, of secrets. But he overreached. Overreached how? Marchand called softly from his table. She ignored him, focusing on Poirot. Suppose, monsieur, a man obtained a photograph, innocent in one light, scandalous in another. Suppose he waved it like a flag before a lady who valued her reputation. Is that a crime? Blackmail is always a crime, Poirot said. Perhaps. But sometimes it is only negotiation. Verrier rose from his seat. Madame, enough games. Did you kill Vale? She laughed again, but without warmth. No, I'm not so vulgar. I left him at midnight very much alive. He poured me a final glass of whiskey with that ridiculous chipped decanter. When I descended, he was smoking and humming some dreadful tune. If someone killed him, it was after. Poirot considered her closely. You left at 12 precisely? Perhaps 10 past. Why? Because at 12:15 the porter heard a crash, and at 12:20 a woman in a foxstole was seen hurrying from the lift. A foxstole is hardly rare in Nice. Monsieur, half the promenade wears them. But few wear it with your perfume, Poirot said gently. Still, I believe you when you say Vale lived when you departed. For if you had struck him down, madame, you would not have paid a maid to advertise a handkerchief. You would have hidden yourself, not paraded false clues. For once she looked unsettled. Then why accuse me at all? Because, Poirot said softly, you know who did kill him. You feared the trail would touch you, so you sought to divert it toward Hastings. But the rope you cast for another may yet tighten around your own neck. Her hands tightened on her glass. I saw nothing. You saw everything. You passed him on the stairs. N'est-ce pas the one who went up after you? You know his name? Her eyes darted toward Verrier, then back. If I speak, I'm ruined. Poirot shook his head. Non, madame. If you remain silent, you are ruined. For the murderer will not spare you. Vale was dangerous, yes, but the one who silenced him is more dangerous still. She stared at him for a long moment, then rose abruptly. You play too well, monsieur. I must think. With that, she swept away, foxtails trailing like smoke. Verrier muttered, We should have detained her. Poirot wagged a finger. No, she is clever, but fear will loosen her tongue faster than threats. Already she calculates her own safety. Soon she will tell us the name. I leaned forward, bewildered. Who was it on the stairs? Who followed her? He gave me a small smile. Ah, Hastings. If I told you now, there would be no suspense for you. No, be patient. The murderer walks openly among us, but his steps, they echo too loudly. Martian frowned. So you do not believe Captain Hastings struck Vale? See, Hastings killed anyone, said Poirot. He would do it with a cricket bat and apologize afterwards. I bristled. Really, Poirot? Forgive me, mon ami. It is only to say, no, Hastings did not kill Vale. The handkerchief is a trick, the cuff an accident, the quarrel a coincidence. But the photograph, that is the key. Find it, and we find the hand that struck. Verrier sighed. And if the photograph has vanished? Poe's mustaches glistened. Then we look for where it has gone. A photograph is like a bullet. It leaves a mark even when hidden. He rose, straightened his tie, and placed his hat precisely upon his head. Come, Hastings, we shall promenade. I require the air of the sea when I think of blackmail. Always the salt reminds me of the tears that follow. Chapter 4. The Weight of Ashes. We returned to the Hôtel de Palmier that afternoon, escorted by Marchand and Verrier. The suite still bore its scars, blood darkening the carpet, glass shards glinting like malevolent jewels. Poirot moved with exaggerated care, fingertips hovering above surfaces, nostrils twitching as if he smelt not dust, but guilt. Monsieur, he said at last, you have searched poorly. A bronze ashtray does not vanish into the Mediterranean like a coin in a fountain. It is here, Verrier scowled. We looked everywhere. Everywhere, but not correctly, Poirot murmured. Hastings, lift the curtain. I did so, revealing nothing more than the balcony door. Not that curtain, Poirot said patiently. The other, I obliged. Behind a second, heavier drape lay a recess where the radiator stood. Wedged beside it, half hidden, was a bronze lion-headed ashtray, its edge dark with what I knew too well. Mon Dieu, Marchand exclaimed. Verrier seized it in his handkerchief. Blood, he muttered. You were right, monsieur, Poirot said, unperturbed. It struck Vale upon the head. Afterwards, someone hid it here, very hastily, very clumsily. Marchand frowned. But who could have returned to the suite after we arrived? Poe's eyes gleamed. Ah, there is the cleverness. Perhaps no one. Perhaps it was hidden before you came and only overlooked? But I doubt it. The murderer feared you would discover it, so he or she slipped back in. A dangerous move, but necessity makes bold thieves, Verrier muttered. It must be the maid again. Marchand bent low over his notebook, avoiding Verrier's eye. His pen moved with mechanical precision, but not, I fancied, quite steadily. Poirot shook his head. No, she is timid, a follower. To re-enter a crime scene, that requires either authority or insolence. Our maid has neither. I glanced uneasily at the policeman. You mean someone among... Poirot raised a finger. Patience, Hastings. Let us not accuse without order, but consider who may pass in and out of a hotel suite without remark. Not the guests, they are seen. Not the servants, they are watched. But the police, ah! Always they are obeyed, Marchand stiffened. You suggest one of my men? Poe spread his hands. I suggest nothing. I merely note possibilities. Verrier growled. Insulting. Non-commissaire. Stimulating. There is also another explanation. The murderer might be a guest who wears authority as costume. For example, a man who claims to be a friend of Vale, or a woman accustomed to commanding porters and waiters. They do not question such people. Marchand's eyes narrowed. Madame Delacroix again. Poe inclined his head. She has authority of a kind, yes. But I think not her hand upon the lion. The blow was strong, sudden, ruthless. It is not her style. She prefers manipulation. Someone else delivered the strike. Verrier placed the ashtray upon the table, staring at it grimly. This changes everything. Hastings, do you deny touching it? Of course I deny it, I cried. Good Lord, I never saw the thing before. Poe interposed smoothly. Monsieur, do not waste breath upon Captain Hastings. His hands are too clumsy for so precise a hiding place. If he had done it, the ashtray would be lying in the street, not neatly tucked behind a radiator. Thank you, Poe, I muttered, not sure whether to be flattered or insulted. Martian leaned forward. Then who? Poe tapped his temple. We must ask who feared the photograph most. Madame Delacroix, yes, but also others. Vale was generous in his mischief. He did not collect one secret only, I said. But we don't even know what's in the photograph. Poe turned to me. Ah, Hastings, always you long for the picture without the frame. But I tell you this, it showed a man, and that man he killed. Martian pounced. What man? Poe smiled. That I do not yet say. But consider, Vale asked Hastings to deliver a note. Why Hastings? Because Vale wished to use an innocent as shield. He was blackmailing someone powerful. He expected danger. He even hinted of it when he spoke of crowded corridors. He knew eyes were upon him. At that moment, the porter knocked timidly and entered. Pardon, monsieur, but there is a gentleman downstairs asking for Captain Hastings. I blinked. For me, who? A tall man, English. He says his name is Robert Henley. Poe's head shot up. Henley? Ah, the initial H returns. Martian muttered. Another Englishman. Convenient. Poe rose. Bring him up. At once. Moments later, Robert Henley entered. Tall, sunburnt, with the square shoulders of an officer and the easy arrogance of a man who has never been refused credit. He bowed curtly. Hastings, thought I heard you were here. Dashed awkward business, this Vale fellow getting himself killed. I stammered. Henley, I haven't seen you since Bologna. What on earth? Poe cut across smoothly. Monsieur Henley, you knew Ronald Vale? Met him a few times at the casino. Bounder, if you ask me. Tried to sell me tips on horse races. I avoided him mostly. Poe's eyes twinkled. Ah, but Vale did not avoid you. He had your name. He wrote letters, Henley flushed. Rubbish, Martian pounced. A letter was found on Vale demanding payment from Captain H. If not Hastings, perhaps Henley. Henley stiffened. Preposterous. You can't accuse a man on a letter, Poe said softly. Yet you come here most conveniently on the day after the murder. You seek out Hastings, whose name so nearly matches yours. Perhaps you hoped he would carry the burden? I came to see an old friend, nothing more. Henley barked. Poe folded his arms. We shall see, monsieur. I think Monsieur Henley must answer many questions. About photographs, about handkerchiefs, and about why he prowled the corridor of the Hôtel de Palmier last night. Henley's face darkened. You can't prove I was there. Poe's mustaches gleamed. Oh, but we can. Someone saw you? And soon, mon ami, the truth. It will weigh upon you as heavily as this lion of bronze. He gestured to the ashtray. Henley's eyes flickered to it involuntarily, and that tiny glance was worth a confession. Poe smiled. Merci, that is enough for now. Chapter 5. Henley explains himself. Henley stood stiff as a bayonet, color high in his cheeks, eyes flicking between Poe, Verrier, and myself. I'll not be bullied, he snapped. If you've questions, I'll answer. But I'll not have my name smeared for Vale's filth. Poe inclined his head. Très bien. Then tell us, monsieur. Why do you arrive at the Hôtel de Palmier demanding Captain Hastings the very morning after Vale is killed? Henley drew a breath. Because I overheard Vale in the casino the night before. He was bragging, as usual. He said he had a Captain H dancing on a string, someone decent, gullible. I thought at once of Hastings. He's just the sort Vale would use, friendly, unsuspecting. I came because I feared he'd been pulled into some rotten scheme. I started. So that was it. You came to warn me? Exactly, Henley said more quietly. I didn't trust Vale. and I wouldn't see you with his brush. Verrier's lip curled. A convenient story. Henley's jaw tightened. It happens to be the truth. Poirot tapped his fingers together. And yet Monsieur Vale is dead before you can warn Hastings. Worse, you were seen near the corridor of his suite at midnight. Henley flushed. Yes, I admit it. I went to confront him, to tell him to stop using my name or Hastings's. But when I reached the door, I heard voices, a woman's voice. I hadn't the stomach to interrupt, so I turned back. Verrier pounced. You admit being outside the suite at the time of the crime. That alone could condemn you. Henley slammed his hand against the table. Blast it, man! If I'd killed him, I wouldn't be standing here today. I'd be halfway to Paris by now. Poirot's mustaches twitched. Not necessarily. Some killers linger, believing themselves cleverer than the police. Tell me, monsieur, why should Vale mention you at all if you had nothing to fear? Henley hesitated, then burst out. Because I told him once, just once, of a racing tip. A horse at Longchamp 2 years ago. He lost a packet on it, and ever since he liked to spread the tale that I was in his debt. He had a way of twisting things until they stank. Poirot nodded slowly. So, not a photograph, not a scandal, only a petty grudge. Inflated. Henley's shoulders sagged. Yes, and I thought he might try to pin it on Hastings. That's why I came. Verrier's gaze was like a knife. You admit being outside his door. You admit grievance. And you expect us to believe you simply slunk away? Henley's fists clenched. Yes, because I'm a coward in that moment. I heard a woman's laugh, and I turned back. That's the whole of it. Poe studied him keenly. Perhaps. Or perhaps you struck and now hide behind honesty half-confessed. Henley's face hardened. If you believe that, prove it. Otherwise, stop toying with me, I broke in, stung by Henley's obvious humiliation. Poe, surely if Henley had meant murder, he would deny being near the suite altogether. A guilty man wouldn't admit half the truth. Perhaps, Poe allowed. Or perhaps he tells a little truth to disguise a greater lie. Verrier snapped his file shut. We should hold him. It is too much coincidence, his name, his presence, his quarrel. Henley's eyes flashed. You'll do no such thing. I'm innocent. Poe raised a hand. Monsieur, restraint. To detain Monsieur Henley now would be premature. The true murderer will only smile at your mistake. Martian frowned. Then you clear him? I clear no one, Poe said calmly. But I observe Mr. Henley fears embarrassment, yes. He fears being used. But murder? None. He is hot-tempered, but not ruthless. He plays cricket, not roulette. Henley breathed hard, then straightened. So be it. Keep me under suspicion if you must. But mark me, when the truth comes out, it will not be me you're hunting. Poe smiled faintly. Ah, that is certain. But whether you are hunter or hunted, we shall see. We left the suite in silence, Poe walking with hands clasped behind his back, humming under his breath. Well? I asked at last. Do you believe him? Poe tilted his head. Henley tells enough truth to be plausible, but not all. That is why I let him walk. A guilty man would run. An innocent man will linger and watch. And I, mon ami, will watch him in return, I sighed. And meanwhile, I remain the shadow of this Captain H. Poe patted my arm. Courage, Hastings. The photograph will surface soon enough, and with it, the hand that struck Vale will be revealed. Chapter 6. The Lion and the Handkerchief. Poe stood before the table where the lion-headed ashtray gleamed. The bronze beast caught the lamplight, its mane glittering like fire. Around it sat our uneasy company. Madame Delacroix, poised but pale. Henley, restless. Claudine, twisting her apron. Verrier, stern. And Marchand, his pen laid neatly across his file as though nothing could disturb his composure. Poe began softly, his voice measured and calm. This lion killed Ronald Vale. One blow, heavy and sure. But more than bronze, it was a trick that nearly condemned the innocent. The handkerchief with the letter H, so conveniently placed beside the body, was no accident. It was a lure. Madame Delacroix told the maid to hand it over at once, to ensure the police noticed. I shifted uneasily in my chair. But reflect, mes amis, Poe went on. If Madame Delacroix herself had struck Vale, she would have concealed her presence entirely. Instead, she staged a clue, waving suspicion toward Captain Hastings. That is not the act of a murderer. It is the act of one who fears the trail may drift too near. Herself, and another she wished to protect. His gaze moved slowly, and at last it rested on Marchand. Vale's letter demanded money from Captain H, not Hastings, not Henley. It was Captain Henri Marchand. He feared exposure, and Madame Delacroix feared ruin beside him. Together they nudged suspicion elsewhere. But the ashtray told me what the handkerchief could not. Who wielded the blow? Verrier stiffened. What are you saying? Poe's finger tapped the ashtray. The weapon was hidden after the police had already arrived. Who alone could stroll into the sealed suite and place it behind the radiator, unquestioned? A uniformed officer. Inspector Marchand, Henley muttered. Good Lord. Madame Delacroix looked away, her knuckles whitening around her glass. Poe pressed on. The photograph Vale held over you, Marchand, was taken at the Villa Masquerade. It did not show a trivial indiscretion. It showed you and Madame Delacroix alone on the balcony. Your face bent close, her hand upon your cheek, lips nearly joined in a kiss. To some, nothing. But to a married woman of position, and to a rising officer whose future rested on her husband's patronage, it was ruinous. Yes, people whispered already of Madame Delacroix for calling on friends in their hotel suites when the hour was late. But whispers are smoke. The photograph, it was fire. A single image made rumor undeniable, and Vale knew it. He needed only that frozen instant to destroy you both, and he delighted in the power it gave him. Marchand's pen lay still. His voice was steady, but his mustache quivered. Speculation? No, said Poe firmly. Details. You knew the decanter was chipped before anyone spoke of it. That betrayed your private search? The maid found the envelope Vale had hidden beneath the ashtray stand. Inside was the photograph. And when I turned the lion earlier, your eyes flickered with recognition. Always, Marchand. You were too precise, too neat. Verrier rose, face gray. Henry, tell me this is not true. Marchand adjusted his cuffs. At last he spoke quietly, almost gently. It is true. Vale threatened me. It is true he had the photograph. And yes, it is true I struck him. I would not see her name dragged through filth, nor mine. Better him dead than the woman than we, destroyed. Madame Delacroix's composure cracked. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, color rose in her cheeks. Poe inclined his head. So it was not only fear of scandal. There was affection also. Perhaps love. But love, when mixed with fear, is a dangerous wine. She turned her face away, whispering, We were careless. Marchand looked at her, a single glance that said all the words he could not speak before witnesses. Then his shoulders straightened. Careless, yes, but not cowards. I will answer for it. Verrier's voice was raw. Henri Marchand, you are under arrest for the murder of Ronald Vale. The gendarme stepped forward. The click of handcuffs rang out like a closing book. Marchand did not resist. He only looked once more at Delacroix. She sat unmoving, her fox-stole limp, tears bright but unshed. Poe adjusted the ashtray so that the lion faced east, toward the pale suggestion of dawn creeping through the windows. There, Hastings, he said gently. You are free. Only the truth endures, I swallowed hard. And to think I was nearly undone by a single embroidered initial. Poe smiled. Pah! You Hastings are too innocent for scandal. Even in a photograph, you would be looking the wrong way. Thank you very much, I said dryly. He chuckled, patted my arm, and offered me his. Come, mon ami. The Riviera is too bright for shadows. We will walk by the sea. And tonight, no oysters, Hastings. They lead only to scandal. Epilogue. The Riviera forgets. I have always considered the Riviera an unsuitable place for crime. Sunshine, bougainvillaea, and promenade bands do not naturally invite murder. Yet there I was, not a week ago, staring down the possibility of being hanged for one. Thanks to Poirot, I am now free to walk the Promenade des Anglais without a gendarme at my elbow, but I confess the experience has left me somewhat cautious. Whenever a waiter hands me a napkin, I examine it very carefully to be sure it has no initials embroidered upon it. As for Henley, he shook my hand the day after Martian's arrest and muttered something about damned awkward business. I believe he felt guilty for ever suspecting me, though to my mind, he brought most of his troubles upon himself by having the sort of face that makes one imagine scandal. Madame Delacroix remains in Nice. She walks the terraces as if nothing had happened, foxtails bobbing, eyes daring anyone to whisper. Her defiance is admirable in its way, though one cannot help but wonder whether she looks for Marchand each time the crowd stirs. Of Marchand, I will only say this. He was a brave man in the war and a clever officer afterwards, but pride and passion are dangerous companions. He struck veil to protect not only his honor, but a woman he loved too well. It cost him his freedom, and very nearly my own. I almost pity him. Almost. One evening, as we watched the sun set behind the headland, Poe turned to me with that infuriating calm. You see, Hastings, always it is the little detail. An initial, a rank, a glance at an ashtray. From these, one builds the truth. I grumbled something about having had quite enough initials to last a lifetime. He only smiled and adjusted his mustaches. Courage, mon ami. The sea washes away scandal. And in time, even here in Nice, romance is remembered more kindly than murder.